Hey Alex, thought you said you got another car, not a toaster.
Ah, yeah, because it's shaped like a box. I get it. It's nice. Funny.
Hey, is that a toaster you're driving?
Yeah, it's shaped like a box. Good one.
Hey, where'd you get the toaster?
Right, because it's a box.
Hey, your car looks just like a
Toaster. Right, because, it's a box. Right.
Hey, I see the toaster. Where's the bread?
There are other box-shaped things besides a toaster, right?
You keep butter in the glove box? How did you even get in here? Look, it's your car.
Toaster car.
Didn't know toasters are illegal.
Now, you know what? Hi, let's talk about the Swiss Army knife. I've mentioned this before in another video, but you'll see why I'm bringing this up. The Swiss Army knife came out, and around the time, its contemporaries were basically just fixed blade knives. What the Swiss Army knife did is it sacrificed high durability, high strength, and a large fixed blade in exchange for more functionality and more overall versatility. You get a smaller blade with a weaker locking system, but you can do light duty things with that blade, and you get tweezers, a screwdriver, corkscrew, depending on the model, many different things. And though there may have been detractors when it came out, the Swiss Army knife certainly has caught on. It took over the knife industry and then spawned its own industry, the multi-tool, whereas companies try to cram as much functionality into something as possible, letting it do a whole bunch of different things to a slightly lesser extent than any one tool. A Leatherman is slightly less useful than pliers usually, and that's an example. So why do I bring this up? Because the Honda Element is the multi-tool of Honda, and that will become obvious as I go on. The early 2000s was a time of economic optimism and adventure in the United States. Many young car buyers were buying cars at younger ages, and so many car companies decided to capitalize on that, coming up with vehicles that were specifically going after that age demographic. Honda decided that a good way to do this was to create a sort of Frankenstein vehicle of different nostalgic ideas embodying adventure and go-anywhere attitude. And so they created a compact car, used a little bit from different cars in the lineup, to make something that was a combination of a surf wagon, a pickup truck, a hatchback, and a van. The resulting vehicle from this design philosophy was the Concept X, which then became the Honda Element. The idea was to employ packaging to create the most cargo space and passenger space possible in the smallest overall footprint. They did this by pushing the engine very far forward, pushing the console all the way up to the front, not having a center console at all to maximize cargo space, and create a perfectly flat floorboard, which they maintained by putting the fuel tank underneath the car rather than making a bump for it. The idea then was that you had a band van that could park in the same spot as a Golf, and sure enough, it can. But who would buy this quirky new vehicle, you might ask? Well, Honda believed it was going to be mid-20s to 30s male bachelors with a few friends who played in a band and liked to go surfing on the weekends. And they really pushed this idea that the Element was the young person's go-getter car, with commercials that did away with traditional stoic marketing in favor of satire, humor, and irony, featuring two-dimensional talking animals, most notably Gil the Crab, along with a two-dimensional Element cutout. The commercials were less about the car and more about the vibe of the car. And as so often happens with this type of marketing, the buyers in the end who bought most Elements weren't those who were actually young, but those who were young at heart and wanted to recapture that fountain of youth aspect, thanks to that marketing. And so most Element buyers ended up being over 40 years old. Another very large demographic of Element buyers were those with mobility issues. You see, the Element does not have a B-pillar. And this allows you to swing open both doors and gain a very large egress to get in and out of the cabin. And so the Element became a very popular car for those with mobility issues and disabilities. And so Honda continued to pitch the Element as the hip young person's car, despite most of their buyers being middle-aged. Sales were alright, but they began to slump, and finally in 2011, Honda decided to shut the double doors on Element production. And so that's the history of the car, but as for the actual ownership experience, shut up, bird. But as for the actual ownership experience, we'll get to that right after this sponsored segment. Just kidding. Never gonna happen. Anyways, I've owned this car a little over 8 months and put a little over 8,000 miles on it. In that time, I've done a good bit of work to it, mainly just because of the higher mileage. This car has 243,000 miles, and while that's a good bit for an average car, it's chump change for an Element. These can go 400, 500, 600,000 miles in the original drivetrain. Honda gave these a K24 engine and either a 5-speed manual or automatic transmission. Early models had a 4-speed automatic. Mine is an 04 with a 5-speed manual. The K24 is a well-running, beautifully built engine. It runs smooth, it doesn't shake a lot, it doesn't scream, and it only really has one flaw, which is that the VTEC solenoid can go out. But considering ease of accessibility and price for this, you're getting off pretty easy when it comes to engine flaws. As for the transmission, it's typical Honda, 5-speed manual, smooth clutch, good shifting, no complaints there. The serviceability aspect of this is great. Even though it's a small car, the packaging is done so well that all of the parts are far enough away from each other that you get a lot of tooling access. And there's very few scenarios where you need specialty tooling. For example, when I did the clutch on this, I didn't need any universal or wobble sockets at any point during that process. I got everything done, basic tools and an impact. And that's not something you can say for every vehicle. But as far as a DIY maintenance vehicle, it's hard to get better than this. So serviceability is great and all, but thankfully there's more to car ownership than just working on it. How is this car to live with? Well, as you may have noticed, it's shaped like a box. But front to back, it's actually quite short. I had a Ford Focus before this, and this is shorter than that. But top to bottom, this is very tall, about the same height as most modern SUVs. Because of this, your cargo space is very vertical. And so if you're doing something like moving a mini fridge, you would just slide it straight back. This has lended itself to a lot of modification, including people who like to overland with these cars and outfit them with purpose-built storage solutions so they can mimic a tiny home in the Element. So as far as spending time in this interior, some people live in it. This car has quite a few party tricks, but the biggest has to be the rear seats. By pulling this strap, pushing the seat back down, then pulling a strap at the front, you can lift the seat up and using this built-in carabiner, clamp it to the grab handle, effectively creating a panel van and giving you all of this cargo space. Additionally, these seats can be removed if you so desire, and a lot of people do so, allowing this car to do things you wouldn't really expect storage-wise. Put it back down, you just pull this, drop it, and you're done. And like a classic infomercial, but wait, there's more. By pulling the headrest from the front seat and placing it to the side and sliding the front seat forward and reclining it back, you can effectively create a full-length lounge chair, which you can then move into and use as a chair, or you can recline the rear seats and use it as a bed. And I have personally done this, and it works very well. Not the way you're thinking. And as I mentioned before, the console is pushed all the way forward to maximize space for the passengers. This means that the manual or shift lever is up here rather than down here. And if I had one ergonomic complaint, if I was being really nitpicky, I would say that shifting into fifth, I do this little stretch, which is something you don't usually have to do in other cars, but it's not something that I would consider a deal breaker by any means. I do have one negative point of criticism in my time with the Element, and that is, it's not the best highway car. Around the city and in suburban areas, it's great. It's easy to park, easy to maneuver, handles reasonably well, don't really have a problem. Once you get on the highway and you go particularly above 60, 65 miles per hour, that's when things start to get a little sketchy. This transmission, the manual, has 5 gears. In 5th gear, I'm turning 3,800 RPM at 70 miles per hour. The engine is humming quite loudly, but thankfully not shaking itself apart because it's built so well. Though it is something to mention. As a result, you don't make particularly good gas mileage in this vehicle. I make somewhere around 20 in the city and maybe 23 on the highway. Less than you'd expect for a compact car, but considering the boxy profile of this car, it's about as good as you can get. Also considering the boxy profile, when a large gust of wind hits and you're at speed, it tends to make the car feel like it's about to fly off the road. And so it's really important that you have good tires and that you're always being aware when driving this, especially on the highway. And of course, we have to talk about ride quality. Now, this obviously isn't a luxury vehicle, so you shouldn't expect a plush ride, but it's worth noting how this drives. Because this is such a compact car, yet has such a high roofline, the center of gravity is higher than it would normally be. Honda realized this and knew that if you turned with such a high center of gravity, it would lean very far left to right. In order to counter that, they have stiffer springs and thicker sway bars than you would normally see on something like a Civic. As a result, this has a slightly harsh ride quality over bumps and deviations in the road. It's not jarring, but it is noticeable. The trade-off is you don't lean so much as you would without those adjustments to the suspension in a turn. So stability in exchange for plushness. As far as driving it, the steering is responsive and has good feedback, just like pretty much any other Honda. And the driving position is upright and alert. You have tons of visibility because it's basically like a glass shed. And so you have no problem seeing any part of the car. The only exception of that is when you have the seats in panel van mode, you can't see out the back. To counter that, I've installed blind spot monitors in this car for those times. Now, there's an elephant in the room here when it comes to styling. A lot of people think these are some of the ugliest cars ever made. They point to the large plastic cladding and the overusage of geometric shapes. I mean, the whole thing is a giant cube. But I don't think it's an issue, personally. This car is not fast, they never have been, and they're not sexy. They never were meant to be. What it is meant to be is utilitarian above all else. The phrase function over form at its max. Think of a power tool, like this circular saw. It's got a lot of rubber overmolding. Here, and a bunch of plastic reinforcement. It's not for aesthetics. It's so that if you throw it or drop it, it doesn't get as easily damaged. It's the same kind of thinking with the Element. If a shopping cart goes awry, it's probably going to be fine. The rugged design really, to me, fits the car. And personally, this is my favorite version of the Element. The plastic cladding and all. I just think it's very of its design language, and I think it should be appreciated more. So the question becomes, who is this car for? And the answer is not so simple. If you're looking for a car to do a specialized thing very well, this is not your car. This car's strength lies in it being a complete multi-tool and having no specialization. It can do a little bit of a lot of things. It can do a little bit of what a pickup does, a little bit of what a van does, a little bit of what a hatchback does. You get the idea. All of its attributes and quirks aside, when you get this car, you're getting a very reliable power plant with almost no fatal flaws, an easily serviceable suspension, and overall parts are easy to find and plentiful and cheap. So from that aspect, you're getting a good car. The question is, are the quirks and compromises of this car compared to something like a Civic worth it to the point that you are so in love with the features and versatility this car provides that you would be willing to sacrifice things like fuel economy and pleasant driving on the highway? If so, I think this is a great car to pick up. I picked it up because I pretty much always wanted one, and I daily drive it, and I really don't have many complaints as far as ownership. These are reliable, these are tough, they're out there. Though they may not be the easiest car to find, they have a strong following for a reason. They're unique, they have a lot of personality, and they're good cars. Maybe the Element's not for you, but at the very least, I think everyone can respect the abilities and versatility that something like this brings to the table. The true multi-tool of Honda. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.